guys, happy Vlogmas Day 4. So get excited, you guys have been requesting an updated skincare routine video from me. So today for Vlogmas Day 4, I'm going to be sharing with you guys my daily morning and nighttime skincare routine. So I'll just start out showing you guys my morning skincare routine, seg into the nighttime skincare routine, and at the end of the video I will kind of touch on some of the most frequently asked questions when it comes to why I do things the way that I do and why I choose certain products over others. But in the morning, I start out my skincare routine by just a completely dry face. First thing, I just go ahead and start applying my sunscreen. I wear Elta MD UV Sport. This is a combination sunscreen that has zinc in it as well as some chemical filters. So it gives good broad spectrum coverage against both ultraviolet light in the UVA and UVB ranges, as well as some protection against visible light in the blue range spectrum from the zinc within the product. I also like that this is water resistant, so it has a little bit more insurance to it as far as its lastability between reapplications. But I reapply this at least 3 times a day throughout the day, or every 2 hours if I'm going to be outdoors, which is rare, honestly. I make sure and get all surfaces of my face, my forehead, and my neck. And I also take it up to my hairline, and I don't know if you saw previously, I made sure to take it out to the edges of my face right before my ear. And then one area where people really neglect to put sunscreen is around the eyes. I think the challenge can be finding a sunscreen that doesn't burn or sting. For the most part, mineral exclusive sunscreens do not sting around the eyes. Once you start getting into sunscreens that have a lot of chemical filters, they can be a little stingy and irritating. But Elta MD's sunscreens are really easy to tolerate, and I put them all around my eyes. That's an area where sun damage shows up very quickly with those little crow's feet. Also, don't forget to get the tops of your ears with your sunscreen application. Skin cancers on the ears are very common. And don't forget to get the neck as well. Now, it's getting colder and I don't wear many much low-cut clothing. I tend to wear long sleeves when I'm outdoors, but just for safety's sake, I go ahead and get my upper chest area in case that's going to be exposed today, and then the upper back area, really common area for sun exposure. Hard to get coverage there with a hat, and oftentimes clothing misses that unless you're wearing a turtleneck or a coat or something. Get the tops of my shoulders as well. And you can see this particular sunscreen does leave a little bit of a cast to it, but just be patient with it. It dries down with time and becomes transparent. And so I next up come on top with a tinted sunscreen. This is one by Exuviance that I really have been enjoying. It has a slight tint to it, but I use this because it has an ingredient, iron oxides, which this gives even more coverage against blue light and visible light. And the reason that's important is because wavelengths of blue light have been shown to contribute to hyperpigmentation. And so I like to use a tinted sunscreen over my base layer sunscreen. The nice thing about this Exuviance one, you can see here, it has a subtly dark tint, but it goes on pretty sheer. So if you are somebody who doesn't want to have any kind of tint applied to your skin, this goes on pretty sheer. When it comes out, it has quite a tint. But the nice thing about this is it's got green tea polyphenols in it as well, which green tea has been shown to be helpful for pores as well as acne and controlling redness. Then to also capitalize on some iron oxides further, I've been using, you guys know I love this Color Science 3-in-1 Eye. It really brightens up my eye area. This is like my main makeup thing, I suppose you might say. It has a tint to it, but it's a great sunscreen and it really brightens up the eye area. So I just put a little bit around the bottom area there on my around my periorbital area, my periorbital bone here, and I just kind of dab it in with my finger. So the sunscreen is not entirely dry on my entire face yet, but I just kind of wait patiently. It takes a few minutes for everything to get completely dry, but you can see that tint, that cast that you saw earlier is largely dried down at this point. While I wait for it to dry, I go ahead and put on my mascara. This is my Maybelline Colossal I have always worn. And then I also like to put on some sunscreen on my lips. I take this with me. This is the Elta MD UV Lip Balm. It's great. It is a mineral sunscreen for the lips. Very gentle, does not irritate my lips. I wish that it came in a bigger packaging because I burned through this really quickly. It doesn't leave a cast on the lips. It leaves, I guess I would say, a subtle cast that fades pretty quickly. It's very emollient and non-irritating. So I like to take that with me and reapply it throughout the day when I reapply my sunscreen and in between. It's a great everyday lip balm. Alright, so hopefully you can see now the sunscreen is dry, the cast has largely faded, and you don't really see much of a tint from the exuviant sunscreen. So I'm good to go with my sun protection, and like I said, I reapply the Elta MD UV Sport throughout the day. I don't reapply the tinted sunscreen. I'll touch on that later. At the end of the day, it is time for me to get in the shower, but I'm not going to do that here just because, you know, that'd be awkward. But first up, before I get into the shower, I wash my hands and I take out my contact lenses. And before stepping into the shower, I go ahead and start breaking up my mascara and all of those layers of sunscreen with basic mineral oil, which you can get in the drugstore over in the laxative section. And I'll touch on why I do this. But I very gently apply it to my eyelids, making sure not to get it in my eyes. Be very careful with whatever eye makeup removal strategy you are using. Do not get the product in your eyes. I just rub it all over my face very gently to begin breaking up the sunscreen that has settled down into my skin, and make sure it is all broken up through the oil only. Then, once I hop into the shower, I wash all of this off with the CeraVe Hydrating Creamy Cleanser. You want to make sure and remove that broken up mascara. If you're wearing makeup, that makeup will break off with the oil. You want to make sure and remove that broken up oil, dirt, sunscreen gamish with a gentle non-soap cleanser, ideally pH somewhere around 5, so as to minimize disruption to the skin barrier. I really love CeraVe. I will list down below some other gentle cleansers. And I do that actually in the shower so as to minimize the number of times I have to get my skin wet. I'll touch on that a little bit later. But here I am getting out of the shower and my face is still wet, so I'm coming on with my Humectant Gel Cream, which is the Red Earth Deep Dive Cream. Humectants serve to pull water out of the deeper layers of the skin up into the epidermis, so they hydrate and plump the skin. However, if you just put a humectant like this on to your face and you don't occlude it with a moisturizer, which in my case is going to be the CeraVe Moisturizing Cream in the tub, that humectant gel layer, the water that it pulls out it'll just evaporate right out of the skin, and you will actually get worsening dryness. You got to seal it in with a nice moisturizer. I absolutely love CeraVe Moisturizing Cream in the tub, and actually typically when I step out of the shower, after I put the gel cream, the humectant on my face, I slap the CeraVe onto my face and I put it all over my entire wet body, and I'll touch on why you want to put it onto wet skin at the end of this video. Alright, so at this point, everybody's million-dollar question is, well, what about your tretinoin? Everybody wants to know how I use tretinoin. Okay, so my moisturizer is on there and it's drying, and once my moisturizer is fully dry, honestly, it doesn't take that long, but in the meantime, I go ahead and put a little CeraVe healing ointment on my lips, just to keep them hydrated while I'm waiting for stuff to dry. But the reason that I like to put the moisturizer on first and then let it dry is because when I put the tretinoin on, this minimizes irritation. If you put tretinoin onto a freshly washed and dry face, you're putting it on an impaired skin barrier. If you put it on wet skin, you're putting it on an even further impaired skin barrier. But if you put it on a freshly moisturized face, that really minimizes the irritation that you get from the tretinoin. And some people worry that it affects the absorption, and you know, we really don't have good studies on that. Some dermatologists will advise you to do the opposite. So follow the instructions of your treating healthcare provider. But this is the way I do it, and I have found, you know, clinically, it helps people tolerate it better. This is how much of the tretinoin 0.1% cream that I use every night. I just use generic tretinoin, not brand name, because it's less expensive, and I don't really use that much of it, just that amount. And I dot it kind of even-wise to my cheeks and my nose. Okay, forgive me here, guys. I don't have my contacts in, and I don't really have a mirror, so I'm trying to do this in the viewfinder. But I just make sure and get a nice, even monolayer on there. And I think I did a little bit of a sloppy job this time in rubbing it in the side of my nose. But I'm going to blame the fact that I couldn't really see too well. But normally I would rub that in more carefully and not just leave it glommed on there on the skin. But like I said, you really don't need a whole lot. And there you have it. So yeah, that's my morning and nighttime skincare routine. But some frequently asked questions that I get as far as my approach. Number one, I noticed that you don't wash your face in the morning, and why is that? I thought you needed to wash your face twice a day. What's up with that? All right, so the short answer is you don't need to wash your face twice a day. Some people prefer it. People with oilier skin types find that. They wake up in the morning and their face still looks greasy and shiny, and they benefit from an additional washing. For me, if you've been following me for any period of time, you know that I used to wash my face, and I used to use a salicylic acid cleanser in the morning to my face. But the reason I did that was not for cleansing or really oil removing purposes per se, but rather to make use of salicylic acid in a wash form. And the reason I did it in the morning was because at that time I was using Differin or adapalene at nighttime, and the two together, the salicylic acid and the adapalene, should not be used in the same routine. So I would end up using the BHA in the morning. So that is why I used to wash my face with that in the morning, but it wasn't for cleansing purposes. It was solely to use the BHA. I've been using tretinoin now for almost a year, and since starting tretinoin, I have found that I don't really need the BHA component, and I'm pretty happy with the level of acne control that I'm getting from it, that the BHA doesn't offer me a whole lot extra. And so I've removed the BHA cleanser from my skincare routine. My favorite one is Zapsit, for those of you who are interested. Another reason, though, to minimize the cleansing to once a day is that every time you cleanse your skin, you get it wet, you impair the skin barrier. Water on the skin, while we want to keep water in our skin, water on the surface of the skin will evaporate, and in doing so, it pulls water from deeper within the skin along with it, and that subsequently evaporates into our atmosphere, and our skin barrier is left impaired and dried. So minimizing the number of times that you cleanse the skin, trying to keep it to just once a day, actually can be very helpful for addressing the barrier component of your skin. So that is the reason that I went to once a day. The sort of follow-up question to that is, well, you use tretinoin at night. I thought you had to wash it off at night. No, you don't need to wash it off in the morning. You know, there's no reason to wash tretinoin off. Tretinoin will be inactivated by UV light throughout the day, and so it's largely done its thing and gotten into the cells, and there's no reason to wash it off. The only reason I can think of you may have been advised to wash it off is that perhaps you know, in the beginning that can help to reduce some of the irritation that people experience, but otherwise there's no reason to wash the tretinoin off. And therefore I don't do so. Now, the next question that I get is, well, I noticed that you use sunscreen right away to your face. Do you or should I apply a moisturizer on first? To be frank, the Elta MD UV Sport is very moisturizing. Sunscreens that are in lotion, cream vehicles, which are the vast majority of sunscreens, they are moisturizers, you know. People think that they have to have a separate moisturizer, but it's just two of the same thing. Sunscreens are by and large moisturizers that have UV protective properties and have been standardized to demonstrate those UV protective properties, or hence the SPF labeling and the labeling of broad spectrum, UVA, UVB. And then I use two tinted face products for the iron oxides for visible light protection. So the next question that I get is, well, you mentioned that you reapply the UV Sport throughout the day. Why don't you, or do you, reapply the tinted sunscreens and the 3-in-1 eye? I don't, for convenience sake. That's a lot to be carrying around and reapplying. By reapplying the Elta MD UV Sport with the zinc in it, I'm continuing to get additional visible light protection. I don't necessarily need the iron oxides. I have to say, the kind of tint and kind of glowy brightening effect from the 3-in-1 eye, that lasts all day. The 3-in-1 eye, the kind of brightening effects of it that I like, I don't find that I need to repeat application of it throughout the day. Sometimes if I end up filming a video at the end of the day, I might reapply it just for video purposes, but by and large I don't, just for convenience. But I do reapply the Elta MD UV Sport throughout the day. Then moving to my nighttime skincare routine, I think the first question that I get a fair amount with regards to the nighttime skincare routine is about the use of mineral oil. People want to know, I thought mineral oil clogs pores. It actually does not. You know, I have a whole video on pore clogging ingredients, how the kind of comedogenic rating is determined, and so I encourage you to check that out. I'll list it down below. But in terms of mineral oil, the old animal studies that were done initially on mineral oil, using animal models, they actually showed that mineral oil had a rating of 0 to 2, which is considered very low comedogenic risk. So it's not, by the animal studies, it's not considered comedogenic. Then later, those studies were done on humans in human studies and human-based assays, and likewise, mineral oil was not shown to be comedogenic. So, you know, all I can tell you, I'll list the references down below for you guys. But that's all I can tell you is what the data shows. You know, the cosmetic industry has perpetuated the idea that mineral oil clogs pores, and some consumers will say, whenever I use products containing mineral oil, they break me out. In that case, listen to your, you know, what works for you and what doesn't. But just generally speaking, the ingredient mineral oil is not comedogenic and does not clog pores. The next question is, why do you use oil or mineral oil as a makeup remover instead of like a micellar water? The reason I do that is that oil dissolves dirt very well. Oil will break up my mascara, my water-resistant sunscreen. If you are a foundation wearer, oil will break up that foundation layer. You should rub it into the skin very gently to disrupt and break up that makeup layer or sunscreen layer. But oil breaks that up much better than makeup removers and cleansers that contain water. If you use a cleanser or makeup remover that has alcohol or water in it, those two ingredients can dry out the skin, and water, as I said, can impair the skin barrier further. So I actually prefer just using plain mineral oil because it is inert and nicely breaks up the sunscreen and mascara without disrupting the skin barrier in a very gentle and effective manner. With my approach in using an oil cleanse first to break everything up, that then allows for removal very efficiently and with minimal rubbing and scrubbing when I use the non-soap cleanser. The reason I don't use the non-soap cleanser by itself is that it doesn't effectively break up and remove the mascara in particular, and I get a residue behind when I do that. Why not just rinse off the oil and dirt with water? The nice thing about the non-soap cleansers is that they do have some mild surfactants, so they will pull that oil and broken up makeup off and take it with it into the shower water down the drain. So that is why I do that approach. The cleanser by itself is not effective. And the reason I don't like using makeup removers or micellar waters is that they, first of all, it's an additional layer of water. Oftentimes they include fragrance as well as certain preservatives that can be irritating, can leave a residue behind. So if you are using one of those, I do recommend that you wash it off in a similar double cleanse step. Then once I get out of the shower and my face is still wet, I put on that Humectant Gel Cream, the Red Earth Deep Dive Water Cream. I love this, and the reason I do this is just to add a little bit extra plumping and hydration in the top layer of my skin. It is best to put it on immediately after cleansing to a wet face because it's going to lock on some of the water that is sitting on your skin and kind of slow it, keep it from evaporating too quickly. And it's also going to help pull water from the deeper layers and really hydrate the top layer of your skin really nicely. It'll also pull in some of that water sitting on the top layer of your skin into the deeper layers. That is how a humectant works. But if you just leave it on there to the skin, all that water that it's kind of pulling and sucking into the top layer of the skin, it's just going to evaporate right out. And in doing so, it's going to pull more water out. So that will actually worsen dryness. Therefore, it's best to come on with an inclusive, gentle, fragrance-free moisturizer. My favorite is CeraVe Moisturizing Cream in the tub, and I use this to my face and entire body immediately when I get out of the shower. This has ceramides in it, which have been shown when applied exogenously to the skin to help restore the skin barrier. Then I completely allow my moisturizer to dry. I kind of touched on my applying of tretinoin cream next and why I do it onto moisturized dry face rather than a dry unmoisturized face. And I've talked about that in other videos as well, so I'm not going to belabor that point too much. But the next series of questions that I get is all surrounding my prescription of tretinoin and the percent strength. I have been on 0.1% tretinoin now since like the beginning of January of 2018. Prior to that, I was using adapalene 0.1% for a year. And I saw good improvement in my skin as far as acne control, as well as just brightness, suppleness, firmness of my skin after a year of adapalene. And then probably in January I switched to tretinoin. I have a video explaining why, and I really started seeing even further improvement probably 3 or 4 months into my tretinoin use. Whether or not that was attributed solely to the tretinoin or I would have seen that effect had I just continued with adapalene, I can't say for sure, as I've mentioned in other videos before. But I've been really happy with tretinoin and continue to use it. It and sunscreen are the most evidence-based ingredients for anti-aging, for improving wrinkles, and for reversing sun damage, for also lowering your risk of skin cancers. So that's why I use those ingredients, and people want to know all sorts of details about the nature of my prescription and why I use 0.1% and should you use 0.1%? You should talk about it with your treating healthcare provider. My content is not intended to provide any treatment advice to anyone or medical advice. So it's best to discuss with your treating healthcare provider, and if they don't think it's right for you, respect their opinion as healthcare providers. There are reasons why it may not be right for you. And so, this works for me and this is what works well for me. I don't plan to stop it, as I've said in other videos. The only reason I would stop tretinoin is if I became pregnant. So I don't intend to stop using it. So continue to use it. And honestly, just staying consistent with tretinoin and moisturizing and sunscreen really has paid off the most for my skin and my skin health. The other two questions that I get are, why don't you use toners or eye creams? I don't use toners because, you know I'm not in the minority of dermatologists who feel this way, but toners are completely useless. Toners were originally, used and created when people were using lye-based, very alkaline soaps and having to wash their skin in very hard well water, and by and large that is not the case anymore. But back then toners were created to help dissolve some of that soap scum. But cleansers and water processing, even if you live in an area with hard water, it's not like hard well water, likely. There's no need for a toner. It doesn't do anything, and most toners are nothing more than irritating ingredients. The other thing is the eye creams. Eye creams are, another thing that I've reviewed some before on here for the sake of you guys, because you guys asked me to, but I don't recommend like eye creams. Most eye creams have a laundry list of ingredients that is like something out of encyclopedia. Too long, too many ingredients, put on the thin skin of the eyelids. It is a recipe for allergic contact dermatitis or irritant contact dermatitis. Really just sticking to, a moisturizer that can be tolerated around the eyes, like CeraVe Moisturizing Cream, that also can be tolerated on the rest of the face. That gets you what you need. So you can see that not much has changed in my skincare routine. I have started using the Red Earth Deep Dive Water Cream, whereas previously I was using the Hada Labo Super Plumping Gel Cream, and in the past I've used Neutrogena Hydro Boost Extra Dry, the fragrance-free formulation of the gel cream. And people ask me like why I switch, what's the difference, blah blah blah. So the reason I switched is because when you're on YouTube, people ask you to switch and they ask you to try different things, and so you do it because you want to give people options and have the experience yourself before you discuss the product. So that's why I switch sometimes, but that's not to say that you need to switch or that switching is important or anything that you should think of. But I personally really love the Red Earth Deep Dive Water Cream. It has ceramides in it, whereas the other two do not. It also is free of methyl isothiazinolone, which is present in Hada Labo and many people can become allergic to. So I was motivated to try it for that reason. A lot of people don't care for the Neutrogena Hydro Boost Extra Gel, the gel cream. But as far as just differences in how they feel and their consistency, I would say the Hada Labo is probably the thickest one, and the one that you can stretch the furthest, meaning you don't have to use a whole lot. A little bit goes a long way with the Hada Labo. And then the Red Earth Deep Dive Water Cream is a little bit thicker than the Neutrogena Hydro Boost and also has the ceramides in it, but does not contain the MCI. And then Neutrogena Hydro Boost, I have some of it actually in my bathroom from the body cream video review, and I do still like it. I have another jar of I'm on my second jar of the Red Earth Deep Dive Water Cream, but I don't have a problem with any of the three of them. I think they're all great and all do a really nice job of plumping up the skin and hydrating the skin, and you would be well served by any of them. But I will list everything down below in the description box that I used in my routines. I hope this video was helpful to you guys. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and as always, don't forget, sunscreen and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye.